All right, Steeler fans, it is Friday. That means it is time for Behind Enemy Lines, the regular season finale. Gosh, I can't believe the regular season is ending. Week 18, Steelers, Bengals, Saturday night. Let's bring in Brandon Herriott again, B-Dirt, as you know him from the homies. What's up, Brandon? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again, Jeff. Always a pleasure to get on here and chat football with you.
Yeah, and you're one of the strange ones, a Bengals fan that lives in Pittsburgh. You going to the game?
Truly behind enemy lines. Yes, I am. Yes, I am, as a matter of fact.
Oh, so you have good seats or the
Well, if you look at the weather report, you could say I have excellent seats. It would be the
what
club seats where I can
what is the it's going to be cold. Are they calling for any
cold.
precipitation? Just cold.
No, as of right now, it's just it's probably going to be too cold to snow.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I hope you enjoy the game. This is weird. This is a strange game in a lot of ways. This is, the fact that the Ravens play before the Steelers and Bengals square off, so the Steelers will know their AFC North hopes and aspirations before kickoff. That's kind of odd. I'm surprised the NFL did that. But the Bengals they're hot, but they also haven't beaten like really good teams. I mean, the Broncos win was a big one in overtime, but everyone else that they've beaten during their 4-game winning streak, they all have losing records. What is your
Hmm.
take on the Bengals? Let's first say if they get in, and that's a big if. We'll talk about that in a second. If they get in, do you still think this is a team that can do some damage, or do you still think there are some major flaws?
Man, I listen. Joe Burrow always has a puncher's chance.
Right.
I'll give him a puncher's chance with anything. But our defense, we've been saying it over and over and over again on Running Through the Jungle. It, you know, they're not playing great. They're still not playing great. They're tackling a little bit better than they were, but they're playing much poorer teams. Playing poor offensive teams and poorly ran teams, and just you know they've beat up on and had decent days on subpar teams. Um, big, I thought they played fairly well against Denver. I honestly wasn't sure if our defense could hold them under 30. They barely did, but they did. We won.
Yeah.
So, but I still don't trust it. I still don't trust our defense. There's a lot of structure problems, not playing disciplined, especially up front in that front seven, no gap integrity whatsoever, which leads to long runs, gaping holes, and gashed runs, and also which happened in our first game. I can't tell you how many times Russell Wilson made one step up, popped out to the right, and was wide open outside of the pocket to throw wherever he wanted to.
Yeah. It was the game against the Bengals where the Steelers in the first half had all those receiving yards to the running backs. No one was picking up the running backs out of the backfield, and it was just check down to Jalen Warren or Najee Harris. They both rattled off, I think, over 50 yards receiving in the first half combined in that high-scoring affair at Paycor Stadium. Watching Hard Knocks has been really interesting, more so for my view on the other teams in the division, not so much the Steelers. I thought it was very telling when Joe Burrow, this was the win over the Titans, which was sloppy. It was just a
Mm-hmm.
weird, ugly game. And Zach Taylor goes over to him and he's like, "Hey, Joe, like, you had a good win." And Joe's pissed. He's like, "This sucks. Like, we
Yeah.
suck. This is not good." I feel when you talk about that, I feel that coming out of that facility. And I'm sure the offense is frustrated as well. But the offense has been, I mean, they've been as advertised, have they not, season?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some games where they turned the ball over a little bit here and there. There was some question. Zach Moss, I think, started off the season not where we wanted our running game to be. I think most of the reason why our running game isn't where it could be is because of the play calling. When
Okay.
you're passing the ball 70% of the time, what do you expect your run game to do? You guys have always seen it. The run game is really you run the ball in the first half so you can have success with it in the second half.
Right.
And I think we abandoned it way too quickly. When you look at it, Chase Brown right now on the year, and everybody clamored for Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon's having a pretty good year, but he's averaging 4.2 yards a carry. Chase Brown's averaging 4.4 yards a carry. They're both at 1,200 plus total yards from scrimmage, and Chase Brown didn't start until week 9. I think
Yeah.
he's been a good find for us, but I think we need to stick with running the ball more often. When he hits 20 carries, we normally win.
So Chase Brown, this would be a great way of segueing into the injury report. He is questionable. He did not practice all week with an ankle injury. If Chase Brown is limited, who else do they go to? Is it Moss as the other running back? And
No, he's out. Khalil
he's out.
Herbert,
That's right. Oh,
who
that's right. Herbert. You guys
we
picked him
traded
up.
for mid-season, and they just brought a guy off the practice squad and back up. So that's what we're going to have.
It doesn't. That does not help. No, for sure. And you look at the rest of your injury report. Cam Taylor-Britt shows up on the injury report Thursday with a limited participation after an ankle injury. He's questionable. Tight end Drew Sample is questionable with a groin. Amarius Mims with his ankle/hand. The offensive tackle is limited he's questionable, and so is T. Higgins with an ankle and knee. You think those guys are going to play?
I think T will. Amarius Mims, even if he does play, he's going to be limited. He's wearing, the big wand on his hand, and it's his outside hand. And man, the way you guys pressure the ball from the corners, it's tough for a right tackle to play that way. So that's probably the one I'm most concerned about. Like I said, if you're only running the ball 30% of the time anyway, if Chase Brown's not out there, it makes us less of a team, but not as much as what havoc can come from not blocking the edge against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. So this season has been up and down for the Bengals, and in every possible way, whether it's the success of the team, the streaks, the losing streaks, the winning streaks. Do you think that the Bengals are going to be a team that's going to get the good fortune to get into the postseason? Or do you think they're going to find themselves on the outside looking in?
Outside looking in.
Okay.
And it's their own fault. I said 4 weeks ago that we didn't deserve to be in if we won out or not. And I truly believe that. It's not a team that deserves to be in there. They should have taken care of business. They left too many. You can count 2 games on missed field goals, the Patriots game, on that. Well, end up being a blown call by the officials. They came out and said it the following week. Regardless, you got to take care of business against those teams.
Yep.
And they left too much out there.
A lot of non-face mask calls against the Bengals this year. I swear. It's like every primetime game, Joe Burrow's helmet, he's looking at his ear hole, and then the refs are like, oh, we missed it. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. But they sure found that pass interference against Kansas City, though. They did do a good job finding that one.
Now, I do want to ask you from a fan's perspective, this season's kind of started to unravel around the middle point of the year, and they've rallied and they've won enough games to keep themselves in the discussion. Is there a part of the fan base that's like, man, we're winning these games where we could have had a much higher draft pick if we would have just continued to lose some of these? Or do you like the battle that the team is showing to at least claw their way back into the discussion?
Well, I think you have to like the battle, regardless of whether.
Sure.
But the clamoring I'm here is not so much ruining the draft choice, nearly as much as it takes an act of God for the Cincinnati Bengals to make a move. And we're looking at coaches that we might want to replace and stuff like that. And when you start looking at it that way, do they just keep it status quo? Is the 31st scoring defense, is that good enough for them? Do they keep it status quo because we won some games going down the stretch? Is the 30th ranked pass blocking offensive line for a team that throws the ball 70% of the time? Is that good enough for you to keep the offensive line coach? Like, those are the things that we're worried about more so than rather we pick 10th or 18th.
So do you think that the Brown, I'm not sure that the Brown family and the Bengals and all that stuff, I'm not familiar with them as I am the Steelers, obviously. They tend to be, they want the consistency. They stuck with Marvin Lewis for all those years. And it was just, they never wanted to make a change. And I understand that, everyone looks at the Steelers and 3 coaches since 1969, blah, blah, blah. I don't see them, if that's the MO, I don't see them making a change, even if they lose on Saturday and finish 8-9 after they've won 4 straight to get themselves back in the back in the equation, back in the mix. You agree or disagree?
I agree with you, and it's something that I'm afraid of, quite
Yeah.
frankly. When you look at those teams, like let's go to the early mid 2000s. We played some pretty good football in that stretch, and we didn't do the things as far as whether it's replacing the coaching staff. And I'm not saying not necessarily the head coach. Maybe it's some of the coordinators or offensive line coach or whatever it might be. You have to dig in and look at every single one of those coaches. You have to dig in and look at every one of those players, position groups, and where you're lacking, you have to address whatever that is. And you look back at that early 2000, mid 2000, we didn't do that. And what happened? Carson Palmer forced his way out.
Yep.
Until now, the best quarterback we've ever had, in my personal opinion. No offense to Kenny, but I think this is one of those things when you see Joe Burrow have that spit and that fire and more of his leadership and personality coming out. I think you have to, whatever that is, you've got to channel that, and you've got to hold everybody else to that expectation. To quote the Steelers and Mike Tomlin, the standard is a standard, right?
Yeah.
We don't have a standard. So whatever Joe Burrow's standard is, that's what I want the standard to be. So to my point there, I don't think all of our coaching staff is performing excellently. I don't think all of our offensive line, our defense, our linebackers, there's a lot to be desired there. Now, listen, we had some injuries on defense. Everyone does. We're without two of our best defensive backs. We have the defensive line has just been a shell of itself. Early, it was the young guys hurt, and then Rankins now has been out with illness, and a guy we really thought was going to help us has been out. But I just think you need to address all of it, man. Go forward. Go forward. Get rid of coaches. Get rid of players. Get whatever it takes. Make some changes, and that's what the Bengals have never wanted to upset the apple cart, right? It's just status quo. Let guys play out their contracts. Let whatever happen. And I think we need to start looking at doing things a different way. And I think that's a business side more than anything.
Well, the funny thing is, you look at Joe Burrow, his contract, you look at Jamar Chase, he's going to get paid after the season. T. Higgins likely to leave unless they decide to tender him again. If I'm an ownership team, I'm looking at Joe Burrow. We've invested so much money into him. I'm saying to Joe, like, what do you think? I don't know if the Bengals would ever be that type of organization, but Joe, do you think we need to go in a new direction? You're the guy. It's his team. Am I right or am I wrong?
100% right. 100% right. And listen, there's a lot that's changed in the T. Higgins front too. I know every time I listen to Pump Your Brakes or any of those other podcasts that I hear my buddy Tate on, Tate's always like, T. Higgins is great for the Steelers. But T. Higgins actually left David Mulligetta, his agent, and went with Rocky Arsenault, who is also Jamar Chase's agent.
Interesting.
And they've both said that they're going to figure it out and stay together in the Bengals. Now, whether they do or not, yet to be proven, but they're trying. They're trying to move in that direction. This will be a telltale sign to me if the organization is willing to do what the players are willing to do. Put your money where your mouth is. I said it going into the season. You don't pay Jamar Chase this season, more than likely you're going to go from $36 million a year to 40 plus.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, and he's having a hell of a year, going for the Triple Crown. So that's their staple. That's their foundation right there with those two players. But let's talk about the game Saturday night. The current line, I just checked before we hit record, Pittsburgh is getting 2 points at home in this game with an over-under at 48. I don't need a score prediction from you, Brandon, but I am curious, how do you see this game playing out?
So I think it really comes down to whether we can block well enough to keep, Burrow's had some fumbles this year, thrown 8 picks. Do we block well enough to keep him safe enough to not have turnovers? Turnovers would be the big dagger here, especially cold weather. holding on to the ball with your hands is tough.
Right.
So that I think is a telltale sign for me. I think you guys are going to have success on offense. It's not a big secret. I think you're going to have success running the ball in this cold weather. So I think it's going to be a high scoring affair again, even though it's cold and miserable. I think it's going to be a 34-31 game.
I'm leaning that way myself. And so when I see the over under 48, and I know the weather's supposed to be cold, the Steelers are coming off an extended break. That typically means they have a good performance. Mike Tomlin with extra time to evaluate and to plan. Normally, the Steelers respond in a positive way. But yeah, I'm not thinking the under in this game. I'm thinking the over for sure. We'll see how it plays out. And I think it might come down to, like you said, turnovers, because you mentioned the Bengals turnovers. The Steelers have turned the ball over at the most inopportune times throughout this 3-game losing streak, going back to Philadelphia when Najee Harris just dropped a pitch and it all went to hell after that. So we'll see. But why don't you tell everyone that's listening where they can find your stuff in case they want to check out not just the homies, but if they want to check out what you're doing over at Running Through the Jungle.
Yeah, over at Running Through the Jungle, listen, even if you're a Steelers fan, you need to take a look at what's going on in the AFC North. We talk about all the teams over there. Our team's obviously leading the charge there, but Running Through the Jungle, been a little bit crazy with the holiday schedule. So it's a live Thursday show this week on YouTube, but normally we are live on Wednesday evenings. We go live with Pay Dirt at 6:35, where we go through me and Pay Saunders go through all the weekly gambling stuff. We've been doing pretty well recently. We're just on the cusp of hitting that 60% again.
Oh,
so yeah, it's a good number. You know, we always 58% and above. You can be a professional gambler. So that's kind of our threshold, and we've been above it all year. But yeah, we do that normally at 6:35, and then right afterwards, 8:05 live we go, and then obviously we do the YouTube stuff is fun if you want to get in the chat and ask us questions. But we're on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast, and a lot of good stuff over there. And then we do the recap for the show normally the day after the game.
All right, that sounds great, Brandon. Thank you for your time, man. Enjoy it, and hey, maybe you'll be in the playoffs, and who knows what the hell will happen then. But enjoy the rest of the season for sure.
All right, thanks, Joe.